Hold on, Mrs. Stevens. No, don't be afraid to hold on.
I'm not.
When America fell in love with Bewitched, they didn't know the dark secrets behind the scenes. The show began rehearsals on the day John F. Kennedy was killed. Within years of the show ending, death swept through the cast. The star died of cancer at just 62. Both men who played her husband died young. The actress who played her mother died of cancer too. Even the woman who played the nosy neighbor was hiding terminal cancer during filming. The magic on screen masked real-life curses that followed them long after the cameras stopped rolling. Sol Sachs never pretended he came up with Bewitched on his own. In fact, he openly admitted that he borrowed the idea from two earlier films, I Married a Witch, 1942, and Belle, Book and Candle, 1958. But there was no legal drama. Columbia Pictures owned the rights to both movies and also owned the studio behind Bewitched. That meant Sol could borrow as much as he liked, and he did. He even admitted in his own book that the only real originality was making it work on television. He didn't try to hide it. In fact, he only wrote the pilot and never touched another script. Still, his name stayed in the credits of all 254 episodes. He just sat back and collected checks. One of his colleagues later said, "He was hit by a lucky stick." The day rehearsals began for Bewitched was November 22nd, 1963. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it became a national tragedy. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated that very day. The timing couldn't have been worse. William Asher, the director, had worked with JFK before. He produced Marilyn Monroe's famous birthday performance in 1962. Asher and Elizabeth Montgomery, who was also his wife, were heartbroken. They knew Kennedy personally. Rehearsals were immediately postponed. That grim start would later feed into a strange theory, the so-called Bewitched curse. Over the years, many cast members, including Montgomery, would die young. But despite the eerie beginning, the show went on to become a beloved classic. Behind the scenes, a man named Harry Ackerman helped pull the whole thing together. He was a powerful CBS executive who backed Montgomery and Asher when they were trying to find a project to work on together. Their first idea was called The Fun Couple, but it didn't stick. Then Ackerman brought in Sol Sachs to write something else, and that became Bewitched. He was in the room on that fateful November day, too. Later, he helped smooth over problems like Samantha's original name, Cassandra, which Montgomery hated because it sounded too mean. Ackerman's steady hand helped guide the show during a time when network executives were unsure about a domestic comedy with witches and magic. Elizabeth Montgomery wasn't just a star. She came from Hollywood royalty. Her father was Robert Montgomery, a respected actor and producer. But their relationship was rough. She once said she didn't want her kids around him. Still, he helped her get her start. She first appeared on Robert Montgomery Presents in the early 1950s and earned praise on Broadway. She won awards, got an Emmy nod for The Untouchables, and showed up in big shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone. By the time Bewitched came along, she wasn't just a pretty face. She had serious acting chops. The story of Darren's casting is one of television's great what-ifs. Dick Sargent was the original pick, but he was already signed with NBC, so they cast Dick York instead. He played Darren from 1964 to 1969, and even got an Emmy nomination. But he had a terrible back injury from a 1959 film. He was in constant pain, relying on painkillers to keep going. One day, he collapsed on set and had a seizure. That was it. He couldn't continue. When producers scrambled to find a replacement, they went back to Sargent. York, showing rare grace, told him to take the job. It was one of the few times Hollywood handled a casting change with real dignity. Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora, might have been the last person you'd expect to play a witch. She was raised by a Presbyterian minister. Her first performance was reciting the Lord's Prayer in church at age 3. She carried that faith with her throughout her career. People on set remembered her holding a Bible in one hand and the script in the other. She had degrees in acting, English, and public speaking. Despite playing a magical, flamboyant character, she was a deeply religious, serious actress with 4 Oscar nominations under her belt. Then there was Paul Lynde. As Uncle Arthur, he stole every scene with his wild, flamboyant humor. But he was hiding a huge part of himself. Lynde was gay, but this was the 1960s and 70s. He couldn't come out. The press never touched it directly. One article called his partner his sweet mate and chauffeur bodyguard. He even had a car with his lover's name, Pablo, on the plate. When Bewitched premiered on September 17, 1964, no one expected it to explode the way it did. It wasn't just another sitcom. It was ABC's first true comedy blockbuster. Within weeks, it became the second most watched show on American television, just behind Bonanza. It scored a massive 31.0 Nielsen rating that season. That meant millions of homes were tuning in every week to watch a witch trying to live a normal life with her mortal husband. ABC, a network often crushed by CBS and NBC, finally had a major hit. The show aired at 9 p.m. on Thursdays and carried other hits like My Three Sons and Peyton Place right along with it. Its first season had 36 episodes and turned Elizabeth Montgomery into a household name. The black and white episodes were later colorized just to keep them valuable for syndication. That's how much people still loved watching it. The numbers stayed strong. Even after the debut year, Bewitched didn't drop off. In Season 2, it ranked 7th with a 25.9 rating. Season 3, again, 7th place, this time with a 23.4. For Seasons 4 and 5, it held steady at 11th place, with ratings just a hair lower, 23.5 and 23.3. During a time when families only had 3 channels to pick from, nearly 1 out of every 4 TVs was playing Bewitched. For 5 straight years, it never slipped out of the top 11. That kind of consistency was rare, and for ABC, it was unheard of. The show didn't just entertain, it became part of American life during the 1960s. By Season 3, Bewitched moved into color. But the change wasn't smooth. Producer Jerry Davis suddenly left, creating chaos behind the scenes. William Asher, who directed many episodes and was married to Elizabeth Montgomery, wanted full control. But the studio brought in William Frew instead. He had worked on Gilligan's Island and The Twilight Zone, but this job was different. Asher still handled most creative decisions, while Frew held the title. That awkward setup led to tension on set. Despite the shakeup and a shift in its time slot from 9 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., the show still ranked 7th that season with a 23.4 rating. After that season, Frew left, and Asher finally got full control. One of the most charming parts of Bewitched was its opening animation, Samantha flying on a broomstick, twitching her nose. That wasn't just some quick sketch. It came from Hanna-Barbera, the studio behind the Flintstones and Yogi Bear. They brought in Ed Benedict, who had helped design Fred Flintstone. He created an animated sequence where Samantha turns from a witch into a suburban housewife in seconds. That short clip stayed the same for 8 years. It became a symbol, not just of the show, but of that whole era of TV. Years later, critics still remembered Bewitched. In 2002, TV Guide ranked it 50th among the greatest shows of all time. Back in 1997, they named one of its episodes, Divided He Falls, as the 48th best episode ever made. In that one, Endora splits Darren into two versions of himself, serious and silly. Dick York played both sides and impressed everyone. When York left and was replaced by Dick Sargent, the producers even remade that same episode. That's how important it was. But behind Dick York's funny and lovable performance, a darker story was unfolding. In 1959, during a film shoot for They Came to Cordura, York was badly injured. He was helping lift a railroad handcar. When the director yelled, "Cut!" everyone let go, except York. The full weight dropped onto him. His spine twisted and muscles tore. He never treated it properly. For years, he worked through the pain. But it took a toll. His discs started to collapse. He shrank from 6'1" to 5'10" and became permanently hunched. His career and health were now tied to an injury he never fully faced. By the time Bewitched began, York was already hooked on painkillers. He took sleeping pills, cortisone, muscle relaxers, whatever it took to get through the pain. But he refused to take anything during filming. He suffered through every shoot. Between scenes, he would lie flat on a board in his trailer. Sometimes other actors helped him stand or move through heavy doors. Even with all that, the pain never stopped, and the drugs kept increasing. By 1968, he was deep into addiction. In 1969, the pressure finally crushed him. While being lifted onto a platform for a scene, he collapsed. He blacked out, right there on set. It triggered a seizure. He was rushed to the hospital. That was it. His time on Bewitched was over. He later said it was the worst day of his life. ABC couldn't cancel such a successful show. So they called Dick Sargent. He had auditioned for the role years earlier. Before accepting, Sargent called York. York gave his full blessing. He said, "Take it. You have my blessing." It was one of his last acts as Darren Stevens. After the show, York's life kept getting harder. He spent the next year and a half in bed, heavily medicated. His savings ran out. He quit painkillers cold turkey and moved in with his mother. He didn't want his 5 children to see his withdrawal. He tried to rebuild by buying an apartment building, but when tenants couldn't pay rent, he refused to evict them. He remembered his own childhood during the Great Depression and couldn't bring himself to kick anyone out. The building was foreclosed. He and his wife kept their unit by cleaning the others. By 1976, the man who once earned 6 figures was now receiving welfare checks. He said it plainly. He went from being a star of one of the biggest TV shows in the history of television to cleaning toilets. In his last years, York developed emphysema from smoking 3 packs a day. He lived in a small house in Michigan, hooked to an oxygen tank. His Screen Actors Guild pension gave him just $650 a month. He couldn't even walk beyond 25 feet without oxygen. But he still wanted to help others. He founded Acting for Life and began calling shelters and government offices. He got them supplies, clothes, blankets, mattresses, even orange juice. In 1988, he helped deliver 15,000 military outfits and thousands of cans of food. He used nothing but his voice. When asked how he was feeling, he replied, "I feel wonderful. It's just my body that's dying." In 1969, fans of Bewitched were left confused. Out of nowhere, a new actor was playing Darren Stevens. Dick Sargent had taken over for Dick York, but the show gave no explanation. While Dick Sargent looked calm on screen, he was hiding something that could have ended his career in seconds. Born Richard Stanford Cox in 1930, he was a gay man in an industry that punished people for it. He created a fake wife for the press and lived a double life. For over 20 years, he had a partner the world didn't know about. When that man died from a brain hemorrhage in 1979, Sargent grieved in silence. It was especially hard playing the perfect husband on TV, knowing he could never live openly. His character was married to a witch. In real life, he was trapped by a different kind of secret. In 1991, Sargent finally told the world the truth. On National Coming Out Day, at age 61, he came out as gay during a TV appearance with activist Sheila Quayle. He was already battling prostate cancer. He knew people might assume he had AIDS, but he didn't care. "Telling the truth gives me more joy than any acting job I've ever had," he said. He didn't want young people to feel alone. In 1992, he joined Montgomery as co-Grand Marshal of the LA Pride Parade. She stood beside him and said, "I love him. I'm proud of him." For a brief moment, the magic between them returned. Then came a strange twist no one saw coming. Dick York died on February 20th, 1992. He was 63, destroyed by years of heavy smoking and poverty. After leaving Bewitched, his career vanished. He and his wife ended up on welfare. But he found purpose helping the homeless through a project he called Acting for Life. Just 29 months later, on July 8, 1994, Sargent died too. He was 64. Montgomery mourned him, calling him a great friend. Less than a year later, on May 18, 1995, she died as well. She was only 62. Within 3 years, all 3 main stars of Bewitched were gone. Montgomery had grown tired of the role long before her death. By 1968, she felt stuck playing Samantha. ABC offered her $30,000 an episode, more than $220,000 today, to stay. She took the money, but hated being trapped. She once said she was imprisoned by a twitch. That twitch, her nose wiggle, had made her famous. But she wanted serious work. By season 7, she begged writers to tone down the magic and give her deeper material. They refused. The sparkle was fading fast. Meanwhile, her real marriage to director William Asher was falling apart. They had 3 kids and had worked together since the start of the show. But by 1971, they could barely stand to be in the same room. Rumors of Asher's affairs spread on set. They stopped talking during shoots and asked for separate schedules. The delays piled up. By 1972, they only communicated through others. They divorced the next year, but Montgomery said pretending to be happily married on screen while breaking down off-screen was emotional torture. The final blow came during the last season. A guest director made a crude comment about Montgomery's body during filming. She was humiliated. Already miserable, she gave an ultimatum: remove her husband from the show or she'd quit. The producer refused. Montgomery walked. ABC begged her to stay with huge offers, but she was done. She chose dignity over dollars. Just like that, Bewitched was over. After the show ended in 1972, Montgomery changed everything. No more sitcoms, no more witch roles. Her first post-Bewitched project was a thriller called The Victim. She rejected over 17 comedy roles in the next 2 years. She even turned down $750,000 to star in a Bewitched movie. Her agent said she told him to burn the broom. In 1974, she played a rape victim in A Case of Rape, watched by 31 million people. A year later, she starred in The Legend of Lizzie Borden, swinging an axe and breaking her clean-cut image. She even filmed one of TV's first nude scenes in a serious drama. With the support of her new partner, Robert Foxworth, She finally became the actress she wanted to be. They stayed together for 20 years before marrying in 1993. But in 1994, everything changed again. While filming Deadline for Murder, she started losing weight and feeling tired. She looked pale, but brushed it off as the flu. By March 1995, she couldn't ignore it. Doctors found stage 4 colorectal cancer. It had already spread. She never told the public. Her team kept saying she was just under the weather. By the time she died on May 18, 1995, the cancer had taken her in just 8 weeks. She was 62. In 1956, Agnes Moorehead agreed to star alongside John Wayne, Susan Hayward, and Pedro Armendariz in a film called The Conqueror. No one knew it then, but that decision would haunt all of them for the rest of their lives. The movie was filmed in St. George, Utah, just 137 miles downwind from the Nevada test site. Only 3 years earlier, the area had been blasted with nuclear fallout from 11 above-ground bomb tests. They called it Operation Upshot Knothole. The dirt still held radiation, but the cameras rolled anyway. What happened next reads like a horror story. Out of the 220 cast and crew, 91 developed cancer by 1980. 46 died. That's 21%. Director Dick Powell died of lymphoma in 1963. Pedro Armendariz was diagnosed with terminal cancer and took his own life. Susan Hayward died of brain cancer in 1975. John Wayne lost his fight with stomach cancer in 1979. And in 1974, Agnes Moorehead died of uterine cancer. Before she passed, she said something chilling. "I should never have taken that part." To make things worse, producer Howard Hughes had brought 60 tons of the Utah dirt back to Hollywood for reshoots, spreading the danger even further. Even Wayne's and Hayward's sons, who only visited the set, later got cancer. Moorehead was no stranger to pain, but there was one person she held especially close, Dick York. While their characters fought constantly on Bewitched, the truth was just the opposite. Behind the scenes, Agnes and Dick became incredibly close. He made her laugh. She admired his timing, his kindness, his work ethic. York had a serious back injury from years earlier, and the producers tried everything to make it easier for him, filming him sitting, leaning, even lying down. But one day in 1969, York collapsed from a seizure and never returned. Moorehead was crushed. When Dick Sargent replaced him, she made no effort to hide her loyalty. At their first table read, she slowly said, "I don't like change." Sargent was in tears more than once. Even though she worked with him for 3 more years, she never warmed up. Her heart stayed with York. Despite her talent, Moorehead never won an Oscar. She was nominated 4 times. First for The Magnificent Ambersons in 1942, then Mrs. Parkington in 1944, Johnny Belinda in 1948, and finally, Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte in 1964. She didn't win any of them, but critics loved her. She won 2 Golden Globes and a Primetime Emmy. She had an incredible range: comedy, drama, villain, hero. In Citizen Kane, she played Kane's mother, even though she was just 15 years older than Orson Welles. In Dark Passage, she was terrifying. In The Lost Moment, she played a 105-year-old woman. She made over 70 films, but the Oscar never came. Her upbringing made her story even more unusual. Agnes was born in 1900 in Massachusetts. Her father was a Presbyterian minister. Her mother, a singer. She was reciting prayers in church at age 3. She kept her Bible close, even on the set of Bewitched. She had a degree in biology, then earned a master's in English while teaching in Wisconsin. She never let go of her faith. She even left her estate and Christian book collection to Bob Jones University. The irony wasn't lost on her. She played a witch on TV, but never stopped being a Christian in real life. Her death in 1974, just 2 years after Bewitched ended, shocked everyone. She was 73. She didn't smoke. She didn't drink. She was careful with her health. Her mother blamed the conqueror. But hers wasn't the only death that hit the cast. Alice Pierce, who played nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz, died of ovarian cancer in 1966 at just 48. Marion Lorne, the beloved Aunt Clara, died of a heart attack 2 years later. After Moorehead's death, Paul Lynde, who played Uncle Arthur, died of a heart attack in 1982. Mabel Albertson, who played Darren's mother, also died that same year. By 2014, out of 23 actors who had appeared in at least 10 episodes of Bewitched, only 3 were still alive. Fans began to whisper about a curse. Paul Lynde's death hit hard. He made people laugh, but off-screen, he battled demons. He drank heavily and could be hard to work with. In 1982, he was found dead at 55 in his Beverly Hills home. A bottle of poppers was found nearby. Officially, it was a heart attack, but people close to him knew he had been sick for over a year. He was one of TV's most recognizable voices, quick, biting, sarcastic. But behind the jokes was a man in pain. David White, who played Larry Tate, knew loss too well. His wife Mary died in 1958 during her second pregnancy. Their son Jonathan was just 3. David raised him alone while building his career. He was so devoted that he asked the producers to name Larry Tate's son after his own. They agreed, but tragedy struck again. In 1988, Jonathan was on Pan Am Flight 103 when it was bombed over Lockerbie, Scotland. He was 33. David was never the same. Friends said he shut down completely. 2 years later, in 1990, just before the anniversary of Jonathan's death, David had a heart attack and died at 74. His ashes were buried near his son's. Alice Pierce gave the world laughs while hiding a deadly secret. She knew she had terminal cancer before Bewitched even started, but she took the role anyway. She kept it quiet. Even as her weight dropped and her health declined, she kept showing up. Her final episode was filmed just 2 weeks before her death. She died on March 3, 1966. She was only 48. Months later, she won a posthumous Emmy. Her husband accepted it. Her ashes were scattered at sea. Marion Lorne had a long life in theater before joining Bewitched. She collected doorknobs in real life and brought them to her role as Aunt Clara. She died in May 1968, just 10 days before she too was awarded a posthumous Emmy. Elizabeth Montgomery accepted it for her. 2 women from the same show. 2 Emmys after death. Too many goodbyes. Most people think the show Bewitched left behind a trail of tragedy. Elizabeth Montgomery, the star, died of cancer at just 62. Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora, passed from cancer too, at 73. Others linked to the show also faced hardship. Fans began whispering about a curse, but Erin Murphy didn't just survive it. She completely broke the pattern. Born on June 17, 1964, Murphy played Little Tabitha in 103 episodes between 1966 and 1972. She had every chance to fall into the usual trap of child stars. Fame too early, no direction later. But she didn't. She credits her survival to something simple: self-confidence. She left Hollywood on her own terms. As she once said, I walked away from the business before the business kicked me out. That one decision may have saved her life. In 2025, she turned 60, and instead of being a forgotten name, she's now known for a career that stretches way beyond acting. She's worked in fashion, business, motivational speaking, and charity. Autism causes are especially close to her. Her son Parker is autistic. She didn't let the show define her. And looking back, she says she remembers Bewitched with love, not trauma. That's rare. When Bewitched ended in 1972, Murphy was just 8. She was already getting job offers, but she shocked everyone. She turned them down. Instead of chasing another role, she went to Girl Scout camp. She even turned down a part on The Waltons. Most kids would beg for that chance, but Murphy chose a normal childhood. She didn't want the rejection, the auditions, the pressure. Her family moved to Orange County, and she became a cheerleader and later a homecoming queen. She graduated in 1981 and never looked back. Her motto says it all: "You live more jumping off that cliff." She also saw the end of Bewitched up close. The final episode aired in March 1972. But behind the scenes, things were changing long before that. Though the show was still popular, even airing in over 100 countries, tensions had started to grow by season 8. Murphy noticed the shift even as a child. Elizabeth Montgomery, her on-screen mother, was ready to move on. She had been like a real mother to Murphy during those years, but she wanted new challenges, something beyond the twitchy nose and spells. Still, the show stayed strong to the end, with great writers, strong actors, and a loyal fan base. Murphy would later say, "If it's done well, any TV show can last." One thing that sets Murphy apart is her rare view of both Darrens. She worked with Dick York first, then with Dick Sargent after York left in 1969. Even as a 5-year-old, she saw that York was in pain. His back problems and addiction made filming hard. Some scripts even had to be rewritten last minute because York couldn't show up. In one season, Darren didn't appear in 7 episodes. Murphy remembered it all, how the crew tried to protect her from the tension. But she felt it anyway. Despite the chaos, she stayed close with both actors who played her TV dad. People talk about a curse, but Murphy doesn't see it that way. For her, the Bewitched set was a dream. "It was wonderful," she said. "They made sure it was fun. There were animals, laughs, and real friendships. The other actors treated her like family. Elizabeth Montgomery especially meant a lot. She really was like a mom to me," Murphy said. They even stayed friends outside work. They had the same dark humor. The bond was real, not just for the cameras,